At this time, I would like to recognize Ms. Bridget, who will lead us in a short prayer. I will then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Our gracious Father, which art in heaven, Father, first and foremost, we thank you for your mercy and grace that you extend every day to each and every one of us. As we gather, we're grateful for the opportunity to serve this community. We ask for your guidance as we gather to make decisions that affect the lives of our residents and our business owners and our developments. Grant us the wisdom and the discerning spirit and the courage and the integrity and the humbleness to listen with open hearts and ears. Help us to work together in a spirit of unity and respect, even when there's a disagreement on. Let the words and the thoughtful actions be just that. Our intentions are for the greater good of our city as we move forward. And Father God, in all things, we glorify and we give you the honor and glory. And we ask that you lead this board meeting tonight. Amen.
Amen. Attention, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. We're going to start with item number 4. Those of you who are here from Aaron, you know that we considered your request at our last board meeting, and there were several questions raised after that meeting, and since then, Ms. Campbell is the one who primarily has some questions, and I want to let you all know, Ms. Campbell was not on the board when this matter first came for our discussion and consideration some period of time ago. So probably I should have done a better job of bringing her up to speed on kind of where we were, and I failed to do that. So Ms. Campbell, if you have questions now, you're free to ask.
Hi, thank you for coming in tonight.
Would you like me to come up?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank
Do you have an exact estimate on exactly how much this is going to cost? I see that there's an Arrington estimate that was submitted in February, and it says engineer's opinion of probable cost.
That was what was submitted to us. I gave you the actual quote from Fondren Construction, the latest one. There's 2.
Is that what was submitted at 4:30?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We had an original quote from Fondren. I've submitted both of them for $250,000, and that's when at that time we felt like we could move forward even without the federal grant. I know that in Lindsay's email to me this afternoon, you asked why we couldn't, what else besides not having been a nonprofit was the reason we couldn't go forward with the grant. And that was it. I included a copy of the application. It was not on the application that you had to be a nonprofit, a 501c3.
That's right.
And it was not on the application, and it had not been in the years past. Once the administration changed, the grants were frozen, and then that came back as a requirement. And that is something that takes a long time to get. It's like a year-long process. So there were 7, from my understanding, what Mr. McCarter from MDQ has told me, there were 7 grants that had been awarded, and because of the 501c3 being a requirement, all but 2 of those could not move forward. So we were not the only one that lost that. And we could have applied for it. However, like I said, it's about a year-long process. And since our first bid came in at $250,000, we felt like with the commitment from the city, plus the money that we had already collected as a neighborhood, and I shared with you all the amounts that have been collected. Everybody in the neighborhood is paid except for one person. I sent you the 2015, the 26, 25, and 24, where money for the lake had been collected and spent. And everybody in the neighborhood except for one person has all committed to paying this. As a matter of fact, in our last meeting, we just divided it by 21 instead of 22, and paid that portion as well. So anyway, because of the $250,000 quote that we have from Fondren that you have on there, and it lists exactly what they were going to do. It's only dam repair. There's nothing cosmetic that's going on in the monies that we're asking for. That because that plan that we had submitted to MDEQ, they had it for a year. They told us it was fine. Then they said it was not approved because they went back and did some more studies and said the water needed to be restricted more. And so I'm not really good at the architecture stuff. My husband can explain that better if you need him to. But anyway, so we went back to the drawing board. We had a contract meeting. I included all those documents in there. We had a contract meeting, and he said that all we had to do was get the final approval on the plans. With the architects and the engineers were there. All we had to do is get final approval on the plans, and then we would get the contracts awarded. Well, this went back and forth. It took the engineers, they have been working on that almost a year, and to get final changes made. And so the original plans were scrapped, and now, would you like to explain what it's going to be? They're going to remove the pipe.
Yeah, one of the problems that came up after the fact was the dam is so close to the back property line that there's not enough room for the water to sheet down and slow down before it goes into the creek. So they had to redesign it and put a large box culvert for the water to fall in to slow it down before it runs off on somebody else's property. And that's what took so long, was all the back and forth about the flow rates and the capture volume and all that, because we just didn't have enough room to slow the water down before it goes out.
Okay. So the ending cash balance for December of 2025 is 76,702. Is that what the neighborhood is putting towards this?
So what happened was we ended up going back and getting new bids. It came back in almost double. The engineer worked with Fondren to come up with a new price. The best that they could do is the price that I sent you,
Right.
300,000.
I'm looking at your neighborhood cash balance.
Right.
Is that the 76? That's what the neighborhood is putting towards the bond.
Well, there's actually more in there than that at this moment. 130,514 is the last balance that we actually have in there. But our hope was that because we know that there's a lot of other work that cannot be done by any kind of money from MDEQ or anything from the city, that anything that you can give us to help us would allow us to, because we've collected money. We have the money.
Yes. I'm asking. So I guess my next question would be to John. What is the auditor's opinion, and what would be the AG's?
Well, so to spend public money on private property, you've got to make a finding based on the evidence before you that there is a public purpose and that it's not to benefit just a single landowner or a few landowners. As I understand it, the property would remain private property after this. It's not being dedicated to the city or anything like that. It's not going to become a park or anything like that. So you've got to make sure that your finding is based on that there is going to be either a flood control measure or a drainage control, flood prevention facility, something of that nature. So it's all about whether or not it's for a legitimate public purpose, based on the facts before the record. So I mean, you are going to have to make a factual finding. I think when you visited it the first time, you made it. And then when you did it again last week, it's been a long month this week.
Long meeting last week.
That's right. I think there was another finding. It looks like that the materials presented to the board tonight are more comprehensive. So, I think you've got a Stantec engineering report in there that's from 2023, I believe, and it discusses, flood control measure, an additional dam, slightly to the east of the one you're talking about. You've also got to look at, is the dam, right now, as I understand it, it's an empty pond. So it couldn't technically fail, I don't think, or anything today. It's not like an emergency repair of that nature, as I understand it. Is there a need for a detention pond upstream? I mean, there seem to be findings inside your Stantec report that talked about upstream detention to prevent that following that stream all the way around and going out by St. Joe and going under. I mean, these are all legislative findings that the five of y'all have to make, based on the record before you. But if you do choose to spend the money, for one thing, I think you need to get a right to enter the land to do the work, but I think you need to make pretty clear finding in your minutes, that it is for a public purpose and not just for the benefit of the single landowner.
Would you advise that we seek an AG's opinion?
I do think seeking an AG's opinion is wise. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think I've mentioned to some of y'all before tonight. Mr. Mills and I were discussing that today, and we think that is by far and away the safest route, because I can tell you what old AG's opinions have said for other cities, but you don't have that same liability protection unless it's an opinion that you seek specifically to your city. It takes time. Attorney General's office, the opinions division usually is about 6 months or so to turn one of those around, and that may be optimistic. However, it does provide you the protections if you seek an AG's opinion and you follow it from liability.
Liability for what?
Liability for expenditures that do not have a public purpose and that will be considered violating the impermissible donations clause of the state constitution. I think it's section 66 or 96. That's what would probably be implicated here. That's what happens when you spend public money on private property. Short of, with the exception, there are ways you can do it, but it's a legislative finding. It's got to be based on the record evidence before.
My question with that is that the MDEQ is going to pay the majority of it. That is a federal, that is a state organization. And if they're the ones that determine the need, and because they felt like it was to protect the city, they're willing to put in their money. That has already been done. If we weren't getting money, we haven't signed the contracts. We're hoping to do that this week. If we weren't getting money from MDEQ, I could certainly understand why you would need an AG report. However, that is taxpayer dollars, and they are the one that said there is a need for this dam. If we were not trying to be a flood protection, that is a FEMA floodway, and we really have two choices. We can fix the dam or we can take the dam down. And if we take the dam down, then that water is going to go somewhere. And the culverts that I spoke to the engineer yesterday, and she looked it up, and the culverts that have been placed were placed on size based on our lake being the retention, that those would probably have to be increased as well. So you're talking about a cost to the city regardless, probably a much greater cost to the city. And I asked her what areas would flood if we took the dam down, and she said the St. Joe Church down that way.
There's a slide in your presentation. Can you show that, please?
By the interstate, all that by the interstate. So this is.
I understand what you're saying. I understand.
I want to be clear that the purpose of the AG's opinion is a totally different purpose than what we're talking about. I mean, you can look at documents like this to make sure that satisfies your legislative finding or whether there is a public purpose specific to the city. You are the city legislators have the discretion to make that authority. Irrespective of what DEQ found, it's still the city of legislators. You govern the city. The purpose of the AG's opinion is that later on, if it were judicially determined or if the state auditor would determine it was not for a public purpose, you'd be shielded from individual liability under that law because you sought an attorney general's opinion and you followed it.
Does that make sense on why we're asking that question? Basically, the AG says, each individual would be liable for however much money we give you.
I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, this is something that we're dealing with the state on. This is MDEQ that we're working with. And I think that if they would not move forward with it either, if it wasn't a need for flood prevention. Now we can certainly wait for the AG report. However, we will probably lose our state grant because that would go back to somebody else. There's a whole list of dams that have been named as high hazard dams. We have been on the list now since 2020, and we've been trying to get this money. We applied for the grant, and this has just gone back and forth because the funds like I said, sometimes they have to be moved to something else. So if we do wait, we are risking the chance of losing, well, I think that would probably be set, is that we would lose the grant with
You
MDQ.
got any other questions?
Do we have a timeline on the grant?
We're supposed to sign contracts this week.
And if you don't?
If we don't, then the money will go back to somebody
So
else.
you get 1 week.
But that's what they
This
keep telling us. This way, it's
Right.
more of this,
I would think June 30th though would be a year end type thing, so I would think all the money's gonna have to be used up by then. Or dedicated to some project by then.
It's dedicated to our project at the moment.
All right, any other questions, comments, motions? Anybody else want to be heard?
I've just got a question. I've lost track of everything. This was Jim Harold's retention pond, right?
It was,
His dam?
no,
no,
it was
John
on his
Harrell,
land, but the county built it.
the county built it in 1972 as a flood prevention. And it became part of Arrington subdivision in 1996 when they built the subdivision. But the retention pond has been there since
But
1972.
he deeded it over to you guys, right?
He kept it for a very, very long time, even after he moved out. When MDQ started telling him that we needed to fix it,
That's
then
when
he
he gave
deeded
it
it
to
over
you.
to us. And so that's how we are in the mess that we're in.
He did widen the lake a little bit to build Arrington Drive. So I'm on the old lake and everything to the, I guess you could say the west end of me was dug out to build Arrington Drive. So it did expand a little bit when he.
You don't bear any responsibility, lawyer man?
So what was the question again, Mr. Taylor? I'm sorry, I was looking at this.
Well, he deeded the property to him right when DEQ was telling him that it was a bad dam.
Well, you mean liability, I mean, any liability against the receiving party of that transaction? I mean, I don't know that the city could necessarily, is that
No,
what you're
not
asking?
us. I'm just wondering if they have a case against.
I mean, arguably, I suppose, I haven't really analyzed it from that viewpoint. I mean, whether or not they created a nuisance or created an unsafe condition that was beyond some implied warranty or something maybe out there, but
I'm not a lawyer, I don't know.
Chris, Mr. Buckner, do you have any say-so on this or recommendation? I mean, and please understand, this is difficult for us because we're not water control experts and we're going legal and we're going financial and we're going against the state. So we're trying to work the best we can with everybody. Trust us. But at the same time, I don't want to be on the hook if it came back and haunted me.
And I totally understand that, but I do know, I worked in a school district in the curriculum office, and I was in charge of the district funds and the federal funds, and I understand about spending that. But I also do know that funds, if it's for the good of the public, we sometimes had to give our funds to the private schools. So I totally understand what you're saying. So if it's for everybody, you can certainly do it.
Have y'all gone to the county and asked, since they were the one that built it?
We asked, the first time we came here, we had talked to the county, and they said that they could not do anything without a memorandum of agreement with the city. We came to the city and we asked for that. It was tabled. And now that person that I was working with is no longer there. But it is in the city. It's part of the city. That the county did seem at the time like they would help us,
I would think they should help you. They're the ones who built it.
except for that now it is in the city. Is their claim that
That's their
it's,
excuse to wash their hands.
it's no
Yeah,
longer, it
they
no
don't
longer
work
belongs to
until they
the
gave them to us.
Yes.
Wish you were at the county meeting. It's
Mr. Buckner, you got any say-so?
It is private property, but based off our hydraulic reports that we got from Stantec, based off an inundation map, if it were to just not be there, basically, it is a benefit to the city to have that levee there. Now,
To what extent?
whether it was a retention or a detention fund, I can't really make that finding because I'm not an engineer. I don't have any of that data to show that. Whether it can be built as a retention fund instead of a detention fund, I don't know that. But there is a benefit to having that there downstream, at least to the interstate.
So the last engineering report was in 2024, if I read correctly, and that was McAllister.
The city
The city
report was 23,
23.
and the McMasters did a report for them.
Has anything changed since then that we may need to discuss? Downstream, buildings, I mean, is it more of a liability now? Since we've grown, as things change, can y'all answer that? I don't even know the answer.
There, with the development that's happened probably since that lake has been developed, I mean, you're looking at all these businesses on Beach Drive that weren't there back then, probably take on water,
Could be affected.
could be affected. You had the storage center. I mean, in this,
You Calhoun,
in here, it does say in here that it's the largest by far of our detention areas that are on this street. And it is needed for flow.
Is it possible to get an itemized invoice of exactly where our money would be spent? I know we said dam construction, I understand, but I mean, that could be a very broad area.
Well, we have a.
I put in there-
schedule of
Oh, did
actions
you?
from the contractor.
Yes,
Legal or Attorney Gannon, is it possible to itemize that money toward?
Is that the invoice of McMaster's?
no,
Oh,
No.
okay. Which-
I mean, it's a portion of the larger
That right
cost.
there. We just got that today.
that's a breakdown of exactly what the $376,000 would go for from Fondra Construction. And then we also have the 70-something thousand in engineering costs to add to that.
That's strictly dam work. That is nothing
Nothing.
west of the dam, basically, except for
No.
maybe.
The state grant won't allow anything
nothing-
that's not taken.
Everything that we're doing is within the parameters of MDEQ, and that is strictly to repair the dam. And it's not repairing the dam, it's creating a structure that will prevent flooding. Like if it was just a regular dam, it wouldn't cost $500,000 to fix it. It is a flood prevention structure.
Hey, Mayor, I have a couple questions, if I can.
Go ahead, Mr. Powell.
All right, well, I guess the first one's gonna be a statement, just as far as living in Richfield, I do know that, when that pond's not functional as it's supposed to be, like, several months ago, we had all those rains, we had water that backed up into our detention ponds that were way overfilled, all the way back, to the neighbors behind me. The water was flooding, backyards and everything, so, it's definitely, it serves the city. Now, my question is going to be, my understanding at the last meeting was that this was a shovel-ready project that they needed that money right then to get rolling with the project. Is that true?
Yes.
So if the money's allotted and y'all are ready to do the project right this second, like everything's, because I've been told that MDEQ hadn't signed off and everything, that it's not a shovel-ready project. So that's where I'm confused and trying to get to the bottom of it.
So Mr. Caesar can show you the text from MDQ you got Friday, correct? That said we should be signing the contracts this week.
And who's that?
And that's, from William McKercher. He's at,
Head of dams.
MDQ.
Head of dams and MDQ.
And that's a
All right,
text
well,
from
my
him
next-
at the end of
My
this
next
week.
thing
where
is
he
gonna
said,
be,
Material purchase. Storm pipe.
Go ahead, Jason. Mr. Powell.
okay, would be, I definitely like the idea of AG's opinion on it. Now, I know, the city gets grants and stuff all the time from state, from federal, and usually there's a longer time frame. You're telling me that they're only going to give you 1 week to come up with everything to do this?
No, sir, we've been working on this for years. It's
But
just
now
a
they
pro-
just allotted, when was the money allotted from the state or from MDQ or whoever's giving y'all the money? When was that allotted? Like what date was it given to you guys or said?
we put the award letters in there and then the updated one as well. But then we had in the packet,
Right, well, unfortunately, I'm at work and haven't had a chance to look at everything that was sent in today. I mean, I know the stuff from previous and what we talked about at the last board meeting, but, if you could just, refresh my memory, I'd appreciate it.
Well, what happened was, the second, price came back when they finally the last time we were here at the meeting, they had just finally approved another, plan.
Right.
MDQ kept going back and forth with the plans. Yes, you're
I think
approved.
he's looking for a date.
Yeah, I'm looking for, when was it approved and y'all are, like I said, I'm being told from one side that it's not shovel ready, from another one that is shovel ready. So you're telling me that you got documentation that it's shovel ready, you got the money from the city, you've already got y'all's money, you got the MDQ money, and the project's happening.
We haven't received any money from MDQ. We
Right,
haven't
but
signed
you
a
got a-
contract with them
A
because
promise letter, basically.
they keep telling us that the plans are approved, and then we talk to the engineer and they've sent one more comment back and a minor change has to be made. But I spoke with, Lainey, from McMaster's yesterday, and she said that as far as she knows, the final approval has had, the plans were being approved. We were told that they were approved about a month ago, and we had a meeting and we got together and tried to figure out how we were gonna pay this extra sum, because it suddenly went from 250,000 to 376,000, and the grant only can give us a certain amount. And we're not a huge neighborhood. We're not a neighborhood of 1,000 houses. And when you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, that there's some people that can't come up with anymore. They have literally given all they can. And we want this to go through. We want it to serve the city. We're not trying to improve our property in any way. That we understand that comes out of our pockets. We understand that. And I understand your question about MDQ. I wish I could give you one because we get a different answer every week. That's just the honest truth. And then they'll come back to us and say, okay, you can just have a meeting and get the minutes to say that you'll collect this much money and give us the meetings. And then 3 days later, they'll say, I need your bank statement that says you have the money. So
okay, I guess my question is, how is MDQ how does that keep changing this every week, and then they're giving you 1 week to get the money and do all this? I guess that's where my confusion is.
we're confused about that as well. We really are trying to do what they say and not rock the boat. That is the bottom line.
Yep.
Because we need their funding desperately.
Sure. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions, Mr. Powell?
No, sir, Mayor, that's all. Thank you.
Ms.
Thank
Bates,
you,
do
ma'am.
you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I would just like one request that, the NDEQ reports that y'all submit annually as the project continues. I just request that y'all also submit that to the city as well, so that way we'll know what the progress is on the dam.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. The engineering company is supposed to take care of that, so we could just ask them to do that as well.
Anything else from anybody?
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Oh, sure. I would add on what Ms. Clark said. She's done a fine job litigating this issue, but, Ms. Campbell brought to my attention, if anybody else wants to speak, certainly you have the opportunity to do that.
Mr. Tristler would like to speak.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing?
Mary's designated as the speaker for Harrington.
Well, I tell you, she's done a good job. When she doesn't have the answer, she diverts to a different one. And she litigated it very well. Y'all should be very proud of her, regardless of how this all turns out. She's done a great job of you should be a lawyer. Anyway, Mr. Trisman, go ahead.
Do y'all have a copy of this by chance?
Not exactly.
It was one of the first ones that was done by Aqua Engineering. And what he did is he went around and he shot the elevation levels all the way around the shoreline. And right here, you're at 286, and the overflow pipe is at 286.2. So that tells me it's breaking right there. And if we don't get that fixed, a couple of these homes might not be here in years to come. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm not trying to stop them from building their lake, but I backtracked it all the way back to 1996. And the land has changed so much. I've lost almost 3/4 of an acre. We got two different projects going on. I'm trying to save my land. They're trying to build the dam. And I'm trying to save my land. And they're wanting to force place liens on my property and not help me with, if I don't help them with their project, they're not gonna help me with my project. So I don't know if I can take on any more water. And since then, this was done in 2010, I've lost 7 more feet. So it's telling me I'm losing about 7 feet every year. So in 2030, I'm gonna lose 7 more feet. And 2040.
But Roger,
Hey, ma'am, one person at a time, okay?
So these are just my concerns that I'm trying to bring up with, because I don't know what's gonna happen. You know, if we don't start doing some repairs on the inside, are these homes gonna fall off into the lake in the future? You know, and I'm telling them, I said, I can't take on any more water. I've lost almost 57 feet.
So, Mr. Chair, let me see if I can try to cut to the chase with you. Is your belief that this project as proposed would be to your detriment?
Possibly if we don't do any repairs on the inside of the shoreline.
All right, so who's supposed to do the repairs to the inside of the shoreline?
I guess it's my responsibility. MDQ's only wanting to do repairs on the dam. And so so it's like, if I don't fix it, nobody's gonna fix it, and then it's gonna be.
Okay.
It might not.
It's your yard, and so I guess it would be your responsibility to fix it.
Yes, and I've been to the HOA asking for help, but they're like, no, you gotta help me with your project, with their project. We can't help you with your
Well,
project.
Mr. Triz, I want to be respectful to you, but that sounds like a problem you ought to take up at the homeowners association.
Yes, sir.
I don't think that that's a city issue.
I brought it.
Am I wrong about that?
No, sir. I brought it to their attention. It's just, they got the city involved is why I'm here today.
I got you. Okay.
And I was just wanting to address my concerns because I'm scared I might lose my house.
Right. Well, we certainly don't want that to happen, but that sounds like, unfortunately, an issue for the HOA and not necessarily for the city. Because
yes,
I think we would really be at risk of spending public money on private property if we were to undertake to do those types of repairs. And so,
yeah, I've been working diligently to try and fix it and do some repairs myself, but when I do something, I get cease and desist letter.
yeah, that's between you and the homeowners association. We don't have nearly that much authority as homeowners association.
So I was just wondering if there could be a contingency to restore some of the land that was lost.
Yeah, that's not a city issue, Mr. Triz. I don't think that's something that we can legally get involved in.
Okay,
thank you. Yes, sir. All right, anybody else? All right, any discussion or?
I just have to mention one more time, that the original amount was, contemplated in the FY 26 budget. Right now, we do not have this contemplated, so we would require a budget amendment in May. So I just want to remind the board, to Mr. or Alderman Powell's point, that we wouldn't be able to spend the money or give it to them this week if the board chooses.
We have to have a budget amendment next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do any of the aldermen have any idea where they would want to pull that funding from? What budget?
At this point, I don't.
Sounds like that's something that needs to be considered between now and the May meeting.
And we're not asking for anything up front anyway.
No.
Right.
Yeah, I think that when this issue was passed on last year or whenever it was, we were in agreement to reimburse you guys. You were gonna bring some bills to us. I think that was the posture. So that at least gives the city some time if it decides to go forward to deal with it that way. So, okay.
So if we got an AG's opinion and that shielded us from any type of liability, could y'all still move forward?
Probably not if it's gonna be 6 months, because we'll lose the grant. If we lose the grant, then we want to get another grant.
You can request expedited if I'm reading your mind from the AG's office, but I don't know.
The bottom line is that the board has voted to go forward, and that's subject to being rescinded, obviously. But we're not talking about writing checks for months down the road.
This is a 3-week or 4-week project, I think.
Yes, it'll probably take between 3 to 4 weeks to complete.
Yes, but
It's pretty fast.
we'd have to get on the docket.
A lot faster than I thought.
Yeah, I was thinking months.
I was thought, so it's not gonna take months, so.
And you do bring up a good point about action that's already been taken for an opinion that we would seek. It would have to be couched in terms of, the legal authority to rescind based on all of this. So the AG's office does not issue opinions on things you've already done.
Well, we're gonna get the AG's opinion.
Okay.
And, for sure. And, that's to protect, shield the city and the board members for sure. And, I think that's it. Somebody, look, at this point in time, Ms. Kimby, you can make any kind of motion that you want to make for reconsideration of the board's actions from the last meeting or not. And we can move forward. Okay. All right. Any motions? If not, we will move forward. So we took you first, so if you want to leave, you're welcome to. Okay?
Is that you? I'm done.
The original board decision states.
Is that,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Watson, you have the floor. Thank you from the art. Thank you guys for being here. And even though you're not sitting up here, you want to be heard. That's why you're here. And just get my attention so I can make sure I see you all. Okay. Thank y'all for your work on this. Before we got started tonight, Mr. Watson held up his document and he said this is a one-of-a-kind document that he doesn't think exists in any other city. That's a credit to y'all. So thank y'all for all of your work in putting this together for us.
Thank you, Mayor. So, yes, you guys probably don't know, I'm sure you don't know, but Casey and Lee and Melanie and Kane and Chris and Christian and whoever else has been involved in this process, we have been through every word in this document. We have sat and read it and assessed it and debated it. And I'll tell you, the city of Gluckstadt is fortunate to have two people experienced in the construction industry helping to craft this document. That's Casey and Lee. Because one thing that we don't want to do is overregulate to the point where you kill development, you see. And that is, I can tell you, I've watched Casey and Lee debate and think about some things that were initially in here that we backed off because of ultimate construction cost and all of that kind of stuff. I say all that to say that the content of this document has not been without significant consideration. Let me give you the very broad level of what we're dealing with here. So Gluckstadt has, since incorporation, batted back and forth at different degrees of architectural review committees, whether it's one person or a few persons, and not a whole lot of standards versus some design. You don't have anything really detailed that defines what Gluckstadt should look like in terms of the built environment going forward. So this document is designed to be a pattern and to be both regulation and guideline for new development. That's the whole idea. Now, I don't know, I would not have expected any of y'all to have read all these pages. It's a lot to read. The concept is this: we have defined different architectural design districts, not by zoning district, but by different areas of the city. Because if you think about it, Gluckstadt is distinctly different in different areas. Okay, Calhoun Station Parkway has a distinct look and should have a distinct look. It is one of your premier commercial corridors. The property around the police station, all that we would really like to develop in a the traditional downtown village type district should have yet a different architectural look. Industrial areas should have a different architectural look. You've got some areas that we call service commercial areas that should be different. And to give you an example of that, think about Highway 51 and Sowell Road. I believe it's Sowell Road up there in the north end of the city, with equipment rental places and utilitarian type places. They don't have to be as pretty and as fancy as your village area. Well, we recognize that. So what this document doesn't do is it doesn't dictate that all commercial development must look the same. Okay? We distinguish everything. And there's a map that Chris Buckner has prepared that divides the city into what we call design zones. And the way this document is laid out is we define different design standards by zone. For instance, page 11 of the document, or actually on page 11, we get into what we call the village district design standards. Village district is we hope to be the crown jewel, the downtown area. And without getting into all the language on these pages, the standards for the village district dictate the position of buildings, the relationship of parking to the buildings, the type of architecture, and probably the most easiest way to communicate the idea through all these photographs that are incorporated into it. And by the way, we got more photographs that we're going to load into this document. But each photograph indicates something that we don't want, or that we do want or don't want within Gluckstadt with regard to how things are to be designed. We want buildings to be articulated. That means that the facade of a building is not a single plane, that facade moves in and out, and the roof line moves up and down, and then it has some unique character to it. You think about any good downtown that you have visited, and you just look around at the buildings, look around at the architecture, and it's unique. That's what we're after. Yes, sir.
So if you look on page 13, and let me just make sure I'm following what you're saying. If you look at figure 10. Yeah, so.
Okay. Figure 10 is on page 12 in my version.
Well, it's 13 in PDF.
Okay.
So you would go building to the left would be substantial or what you're asking. But what's the one in the fourth from the left? That would not be.
No. Figure 10 represents acceptable architecture. All of them. Collectively.
Okay, well, the fourth on the left is, like you said, one level, straight, no indentions. That's what I was asking.
Yeah,
He's
so they're all-
talking about the entire development would not be one, not each individual storefront.
Yeah. See, the idea in this figure 10 is each one of these is divided into different storefronts. And in fact, some previous language, in the same page, we require things to be divided into different storefronts with different widths of storefront. And each storefront should be different. And one of the things about this document, from a regulation standpoint, which is where we're going to go with it. We haven't gotten there. This is not a complete document yet. We don't want this document to be absolutely rigid, because you cannot legislate every single tiny detail of building and a site and everything about the site. It would be impossible to do that. So conceptually, to use sort of a legal term here, conceptually what we want when plans are submitted and plans are reviewed, to go through the ARC for review is we want the review standard to be one of substantial compliance and not strict compliance. We want the ARC to be able to say, yeah, boy, this is a great looking building. And yeah, it doesn't exactly fit with this regulation, this particular specification that we wrote over here, but what you have is a good looking project and we want to approve it. Okay, we don't want to get hung up on little technicalities that in the grand scheme of things may not matter as long as they have an excellent design. Okay, so that's why I refer to this document as regulation and guide, design regulations and guide. Okay. So we have the village district. Okay, we got a number of standards with regard to village district. We even go so far in detail as, you know, we've thought about, well, what if a building comes along and they want to have a roll-up door? Okay, roll-up door. We even thought about, well, what if something changes in the market and that roll-up door that was initially intended for a restaurant now becomes something else and somebody wants to park a car in there, and it's no longer not a downtown. We've written standards in here that would keep that roll-up door from being used like that. It can't go all the way to the ground when it closes, for instance. We try to think of lots of things to anticipate the future and things that we don't want in the future. The document specifies finished material. What is acceptable finished material? Brick, stone, stucco. We provide some flexibility throughout this document. We allow, quote, any other material as long as it's approved by the ARC. There may be a perfectly fine building material that's created 5 years from now that's entirely appropriate. But we don't want to tie their hands to inflexible language. Okay. So we have the neighborhood commercial district, which, by the way, back up to village district, no franchise architecture. No franchise architecture. They have it on the side. The building cannot be franchise architecture. McDonald's cannot look like a McDonald's, and you can't have a drive-through. You might be able to have a drive-through if you're a bank or something. And we've even got some restrictions on how that would work.
Pause 1 second. Where is where is that in our packet?
It's not in your packet. We had this finalized about 30 minutes.
Well, it is, the satellite imagery one is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you, go down. The one he was just showing you is one we kind of overlaid today, trying to give you.
What we did with that other one is
that dark green right there off Calhoun is the village district.
That's
What page is that?
45 and
45 in PDF.
45 in PDF.
Yeah.
Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt.
No, that's right. So we have, then we go to the neighborhood commercial district, neighborhood commercial design district. Without getting into the details, as we go to each successive design district, the standards become a little less because the atmosphere of the district becomes a little less important. In essence, the neighborhood design district requires the same architecture as the village district, but it can be configured differently. In other words, in the village district, we want the buildings pulled up to the sidewalks. In the neighborhood district, we're going to allow some limited parking between the street and the buildings. Okay, different atmosphere. That's fine. It's neighborhood commercial. It's not your crown jewel.
Which is really what we have, like along Calhoun Station
Correct.
and Blugside Road now.
Yes. Right. Yeah, that's right. Then we go into highway commercial district, and again, the standards come down to a little more lax. Again, more liberal with regard to the configuration of the site. We still require good architecture, not the same, not the requirements that are as stringent with the village district. For instance, we loosen up a little bit on the articulation requirements, still required to be articulated. As we get deeper into these districts, for instance, the parapet requirement around the roof is loosened up or relaxed a little bit. Because I'm told from people in the business that parapet can go all the way around the building, including the gutter system, can get incredibly expensive. So let's try to avoid that cost if we can, and where it's not completely necessary. We then get into the service commercial district. The architecture, again, gets a little more lax. Here, we get into allowing some degree of metal on the buildings. I think the committee kind of laughed at me. I told them I really don't like yellow metal, and they said, okay, we'll exclude it. So I think that's the only place that we limit colors with regard to yellow metal in some of these design zones. We require particular facade treatment in this service commercial district. We require a return, the facade to return around the edge of the building. But otherwise, we do allow for portions of the building to be metal, and we only require a portion of the building to be outfitted with a parapet. And then we get to the industrial districts. We have lots of debate about the industrial district. And in researching what other communities do, there's surprisingly little industrial architectural regulation. And that really would be for obvious reasons, because industrial buildings can vary so widely, and they're such monsters in the first place. I mean, how do you make a 600,000 square foot building pretty? Really? And what most regulations do, what our regulations do, we do try to break up the mass of the building, whether it be landscaping or particular unique painting or banding. We have some regulations. We want them to treat the entrance. If you look at a modern industrial building, you will notice that the entrance is unique. They treat that entrance, it may be a different color. They use clear story window, and that's the windows that go from the ground almost to the roof, let lots of light into the building. We want them to do that same thing here. We require some parapet around the building, but we also recognize that when you have a huge building, it may simply be impractical if it's an industrial building. So suffice it to say, the industrial district is the least restrictive. I think it would be safe to say among all of these design standards. Now, to go a little further, beginning at page 27, and in addition to describing the look we want, at page 27, we begin talking about and describing particular building types, architectural type. I will tell you that this information and the idea for these architectural types came from the Lane Park community in Mountain Brook, Alabama. Mountain Brook is I guess it's a separate municipality nestled right in with Birmingham. It's a high-end neighborhood. I was passing through Birmingham one day at the change of the year or the New Year's holiday, and I stopped and looked. And it's a nice neighborhood. So these architectural patterns are taken from something that we know has been built and that I've seen it. I know Casey has seen it. I know she's been there. She's provided me some photographs of it. But we describe these different architectural types. The Southern Mercantile type. There's a Village Mid-Century type building. We won't get into these details unless you need to. Southern Classic type. What I really want to get you to is the village romantic type begins on page 33. Go to page 34. It's probably the best, one of the best examples. The unique thing about this village romantic type is the architecture is consistent with your German heritage. It's the, you see the gable end, you see the second level facade treatment. That building's a little loud. I'll tell you, that's a little loud, I'll tell you. But the building lacks symmetry. It's got the steep pitched roof. Flip over to the next page. You'll see in the upper photograph, this is a picture of a village romantic building that actually exists in that Lane Park development. So you see it's toned down. It's toned down from the pure village romantic. Okay, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. You see in the top picture the tower-like structure. See where the front door is, kind of in the middle of that building. And the peaked roof above it. That's a tower. That is a characteristic of village romantic. The steep pitched roof is a characteristic. It's not symmetrical. Now the building to the right, this building right here, although they're attached, it's a separate building. View it as a separate building. So we lack symmetry here. So even with these descriptors, you can get good, acceptable architecture. But the key is we're showing developers what we want. And it's up to their designers to produce the good product. And it's ultimately up to your ARC and you all to say, yeah, we like it, or no, we don't like it. Okay. And then on page 36, we specify where these particular architectural types can be built. We require them in the village design district. And you're seeing there's a column for unspecified. You cannot build an unspecified type of architecture in the village district, the way we have this set up right now. And that is also true in neighborhood. And then you get highway commercial. Any of these design types are permitted in highway commercial, but they aren't required. So if a developer wants to build a building that is consistent with the overall architectural aims of this document, even though the building doesn't fit squarely within one of these 4 defined architectural types, he still can. He will have that latitude. Okay. And the same as in service, and the same as industrial. I wouldn't expect an industrial building to look like any of these simply because they are industrial buildings. I guess one final thing that I would point out is on page 4, we have a section headed Freedom of Design. And the regulations are intended to communicate the expectations of the city regarding the physical appearance of the building. The city recognizes we can't dictate everything. The city affords applicant a degree of freedom in design provided that the purpose and intent of these standards are substantially fulfilled. We tell you up front that we can't tell you exactly everything that you got to do, but we're willing to work with you and come up with a good product. So that is the idea, and that is where we are. Now there's still a few components to add to this, and our thinking was we got this document to this level of completion where it pretty clearly communicates to you all the thinking behind the architecture, the approach, the architecture, what it would look like. And we wanted to get this in front of you so that if we're not headed in the right direction, you can tell us that we're not headed in the right direction. If we are headed in the right direction, then tell us and we'll take it through to completion. We're going to add some administrative language to it. We're going to add some landscaping requirements to it. But if y'all are good, we are good, and we can move on with your direction. Did I miss anything? Y'all want to add anything to?
Nothing, they do. Good job.
Y'all want to
Sum it
give
up.
Mr. Watson some direction or comments or
More questions or?
questions?
I got a question. I love everything about it. But we had talked one time about how we get people to live downtown, the village boutique or whatever. Is that still possible with these designs?
This provides for upper level,
Okay.
for residential above, first floor commercial.
Right here, in the village district is where it's all about.
Somebody on the phone had a comment or a question?
Hey, that was me. I'm actually finally making it here. I'm about to be walking in, so I'll just say mine when I walk in just a minute.
Okay. I can just tell you, it is all too often that I get a lot of credit for what goes on in this city. And I don't deserve a smidgen of it. I can't imagine the work y'all put into this. The four of y'all, I mean, this is an amazing product, and you guys deserve the credit for what you have done. This is awesome. I guess the secret sauce would be, how do we get people to come in here and build and develop, particularly in this highest end district? Because I tell you what, if we can get somebody to come in and develop to these standards, it's a game changer.
Well, so think about this. So the little town of Livingston, the architecture is different. It's nice, it's compact. That's what you're after.
Yeah.
I came through Flora today. In downtown Flora, they have built this nice 2-story built brick. I mean, I'm looking at it thinking, that looks pretty good.
That's the John Deere building.
That might fit within this. I didn't study it, but downtown Flora, if they can do it downtown Flora, why can't they do it in Buckstown?
Yeah.
Y'all got more traffic. You got a better market than they do.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I mean, I just think I can't imagine the amount of work you guys put into this, but it shows.
Yeah, I really look forward to giving this to a designer and say, hey, here's your Bible.
And whatever.
See what you can come up with.
And you, Mr. Mayor, you have a great point. We battled with that same question about how do we enforce, or how do we drive people to want to build like this, but we simply have to start with some. And I think that's why we pointed out, what number was that? Number 4, which you went back to, the point where we can't really say, hey, we're going to restrict, or we're going to do this, but we have to start with something. Yeah. I don't remember word for word what that sentence was, but it pretty much says it. Bring us something that we can work with. And this is what we're looking for. And maybe it's not to a T, but maybe it's close enough that we can work with it. Right. Get it where everybody's happy.
Something that can be discouraging to the development community is when the city says, well, we want something nice, but we don't know what we want, so you propose something.
Right.
And they propose something and say, oh, well, we don't like that. We want arches and columns instead of that. So back to the drawing board, they go and spend a bunch of money.
Spending all the money.
And the city says, well, that's better, but we still don't like that.
But we don't really know what we want. I like this because you're at least giving it to them. You're showing them.
A lot of options.
Acceptable.
To remember that section's a small, it's in the grand scheme of things, it's limited to right around the police department.
You want to go to the map, Chris?
So you asked how you can get people to come here and build. One of the very first planning and zoning meetings, Priority One Bank was in here, and they had their brand new plan. And it obviously did not fit the city, but the architect, the president, they're all sitting here saying, okay, well, you don't like it, what do you want? And they're all going, not this. So I Googled other Priority One banks and found a picture and sent it to Sam McGaw, who was on the board at the time, and that's one of the ones on the cover one. Giving them clear direction gets them to come and build. So this is amazing.
Yeah, they're already built. I mean, you've got some nice buildings on Calhoun Station Parkway, and that the building that they're framing now, it is sort of at the corner of Calhoun Station and Gluckstadt, sort of facing the interchange. I was noticing that building has sort of central, it has, the framing goes up, there's a central roof. It's got that steep pitch to it. It's got little flares, it's got rafter tail flares to it.
The Citizens Bank.
I think it's gonna be a pretty nice looking building, and I'm willing to bet that if you look at that building and if you look at what's in here, you're gonna find some commonalities. They're already building it.
Casey.
Yeah, and just to add to it, and I just want to thank you and just for all the exhaustive work and Melanie and Leah as well. A lot of thought has definitely gone into it. As you know, when we did the, I guess, consensus from the city, in large part, they requested some German architecture. So while allowing that, but we also wanted to integrate some of the styles that we already have. So as long as we continue to create some cohesiveness and cohesivity, and just repetition of those styles is going to look more uniform. So we're taking design elements that are already here, we're replicating those, but we're adding a couple more design architectural concepts to that. And the main thing is that we create a vision for the city. And with limited amounts of land to develop, I think we just need to use, really set the bar high and try to make, the best of what we have. And I think Chris has done an amazing job of articulating that tonight. In addition to that, what he mentioned was starting off in the village area, which would surround the police department and things, and that would be more concentrated as far as, design requirements, and then slowly taper off into the other areas. But I just think the main thing is for us to be able to create a curated look that is going to draw people, reciprocal business, that downtown area, multi-purpose sidewalks, and just create a sense of community. But yes, in addition to this, we wanted to make sure that we were on board with something that you guys were, y'all were on board with all of this. And I think moving forward, there will be additional signage requirements, landscape, lighting. So there's a lot of other details that need to go into this, but we didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, and just wanted to make sure that y'all we're all on the same page, because it's been a little difficult, as Lee and others have mentioned. Some of the, and a lot of the business has been very gracious and open to work with us, but we have not had the standards in place to require them to do that. So therefore, we still have some things that are coming through that don't have as high standards as we would like to see met for the city. So a lot of people have been graciously willing to adapt to that, but some of them have been a little bit more difficult. So this would be good to get implemented as soon as possible, so we can start.
Gives you guys some ammunition,
Yes.
some,
Right.
something you can use, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause we keep mentioning it.
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you. I know a lot of work's gone into this. It's something we've talked about for several years now, so I'm so excited to see it come to fruition. I know you said with the consensus, with the little thing we put out to the citizens, but even before that, when we were walking, collecting signatures and talking to people and wanting to become the city of Gluckstadt, we wanted to protect and to have our German heritage reflected in that. And that was one of the things that the citizens wanted, was a Germanic look, to some of the buildings and such. So I'm excited about everything I saw. So I hope we can make it come to fruition.
And I think too, I want to make sure that Casey gets a lot of credit here. She is brilliant at what she does with her design, but she's gone so far into exploring these other places, and specifically this Lane Park and Mountain Brook. But the styles that are reflected in this document aren't limited to just the photos that are in there. We have a compilation of hundreds of different buildings that have different elements that all will fit in to this. So while some of the buildings that are reflected in the document might be, they're pretty loud and, very distinct. I think we're gonna be able to find something that is real cohesive and it'll flow and it won't be tacky, it won't be kitschy like you're walking, through Disney World or anything. It's going to look, beautiful and it'll be an environment that I think all of us will be proud
I think we need to take a field trip. City field trip.
It's in the
The
budget.
goal is to create a timeless, classic look that will withstand the test of time. So while there may be some people that are willing to go with the more themey look, we're still going to try to keep that at minimal. And we also have those, he's got some guidelines in place where they can't be concentrated and on top of each other. So they'll be evenly spaced out or distributed to keep the flow cohesive.
Sounds like you got a complete, total positive reaction. That the direction you're going is the right one.
That's what I gathered.
I do have one question. The service commercial district, that one's probably like the largest one, right?
Correct. Geographically?
Yes.
Probably so, but
And then in figure 20, the building has, I think it has the garage door in front next to like the regular door. Is that something that we are moving forward with or trying to stay away from?
Is this what you're talking about?
No, it's on page 23 on mine. Design standards. That one. It has the garage door like in the front. Is that something we're still doing or trying to stay away from?
let me see what we said. I thought we removed all front roll-up doors.
I think that was really, that photo probably is more representing
What not to
securing
do?
the facade down the side of the building.
Okay.
I do think we're limiting the garage door to side and back of the building.
There is specific language in there. If it's a roll-up style door, it has to be associated with an entrance in terms of a restaurant.
Okay.
Where it can't come all the way to the ground. It's gotta be a feature more as
Or
opposed
there's
to
like
a
a
storage.
patio out in front of it that is fenced so that it would function as seating rather than like a service access.
And we can find a better picture for that too, and that's a good catch.
Pretty much we've implemented higher standards for every area, but without being too restricted.
And this is, the point of this map is kind of to show these at the bottom here. It's hard to think about it, but your architecture zones are gonna be different than your zoning. So you'll have C2, C1, we even have some residential in there where if somebody comes in and rezones to commercial from that has a house, say on Buckstead Road, and it becomes commercial, it's still got the forethought is to have that architectural zone already in there. So it's trying not to get stuck in the zoning as far as just having the architectural zones. Yeah. And this is by no means how it's gonna be, just a rough draft.
And for what it's worth, in case someone asks, these do not apply to residential developments. So we're not architecturally regulating anyone's house.
I think it's great. I think I've done a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So other than us all saying y'all have done a great job, keep doing it, do you need anything more from us tonight?
I do not, ma'am.
We just want to make sure that we're going in a direction that everybody had imagined that we might be going and trying to create a look and feel.
I think you got a resounding vote of approval.
Because we still have work to do. We're not there yet, but we're getting closer.
Great job.
So
Kane and Chris and all these.
They've had a big part of it too.
I do have a question though. I know we're not through, but as Casey was saying, we're getting designs now that in a lot of our opinions are not ideal, that this would not allow to happen. Is there any way we can get I don't.
If y'all get off your tail and get to work.
I mean, like in my mind, I'm wanting to get something locked in at the next Board of Alderman meeting, but I know we're not completely through because I know what some things that are coming and I want to be able to, hey, here's your Bible.
Well, I don't think,
Forget-
I know what you're getting
Yeah.
at, but would it be proper and smart for the board to adopt this as it is now? It's incomplete.
It's incomplete. It doesn't contain any administrative language in terms of how you regulate it. I don't know. I'm compelled to say no, but I'm not your attorney. But I'll let your attorney answer.
To ARC, so. I mean,
Yeah,
don't
and I mean, maybe that's where we do it. In case in them, we've already been telling some of these applicants, hey, we're looking for these, but we're just not able to hand them that document.
Well, why don't you, let me say this, hand them the document anyway.
Okay.
So look, it's draft.
Give them some kind of direction.
Yeah,
Okay.
here's what we're thinking.
Yeah, I like
This is what, the board likes it, the ARC likes it, and it's not official, but this is what.
This is what we're looking for.
That's right.
Yeah, this is what we're looking for. Correct.
And I think if we're gonna add lighting and everything else, that could be amendment
Yeah.
to an approved document down the road, correct?
Yeah, I mean, certainly you can amend it, but I mean, if you've got your consultant telling you it's incomplete, I think it's better, course of action. But I do like the idea of just, there's no prohibition against you saying, here's kind of what they're thinking. It's not official, it's not mandated, but this is the direction we're pointing.
I like it.
I mean, you will amend this ordinance over time. There is no such thing as a perfect ordinance. You will amend it. These guys will implement it and they'll say, hey, we need to add this, or this provision isn't working out really the way we want it. We need to, whatever. Y'all understand.
Right.
Does anything happen to the buildings that aren't in compliance now in the districts?
Well, that's part of what we've got to add and figure out how we deal with buildings that don't conform. Because from a logic standpoint, on one hand, we're saying this is the ordinance, but it's a flexible ordinance. But on the other hand, we're talking about saying, well, that building doesn't conform to this flexible ordinance. So we've got to figure out how to address that. There is going to be some way to, if they go in and start modifying the building, they've got to move it toward compliance.
And right now, it's kind of a 50% rule. Like if you come in and you want to modify your building, we determine that's 50% of that building. We can hold you to the newer standards at that point. So that's something we got to implement into this design side of it as well.
Well, and while that's a fine line, because you have to be careful because you don't want vacant buildings either. So we've been playing with this, trying to figure out how to put it into play, how to implement this when you have a 20-year-old building and all of a sudden the design requirements are here and you have somebody who wants to move in, but they're not willing to do that much. So we've yet to determine exactly how we're going to do that. We know we want to do, but is it practical? And is it going to work? Is it going to keep somebody from moving in? Is it going to be too expensive? Is the building too big to make them change it the whole face? So there's all those variables.
At the end of the day, these things are definitely going to dissuade some people from wanting to develop because they're looking to do it on the lowest possible cost. And, so I think it comes with a trade-off. If you want to drive these higher end type developments, you're going to keep some people out. But is that a bad thing? No, but y'all got to strike that fine line. And that's what you've been working on. It looks like you've done a darn good job.
That's been a challenge, and that's one we're still working on, I think, but we will figure it out.
In general design, and this might be a stupid question. In general design, it says the HVAC, like there's one building that's not in, like, we don't want to see, they have little regard to the open HVAC and the utility equipment. Are we wanting it above where we can see it, or are we wanting it like covered?
Which page are you on?
See, in mine.
Page 9. We're not 9 or 10.
Each district has a different parapet requirement, and
Okay.
it relaxes
That was
itself
it. That's what I was looking
outside
at.
of, and it brings a good point, because the industrial area, that's one topic that was brought up a minute ago. It's gonna be hard to make those pretty, and it would be hard to put a parapet around as referred to earlier, a 600,000 square foot building, say Kasai or whatever over there, becomes something different. To make them put a parapet around the whole thing might not work, but in our smaller zones, we have to keep all that stuff in our
Yeah, but like in number 4 there.
the village. Yeah, I mean, it just steps itself down as we go. But
So this building that you're asking, you know where this is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is up here by the, off from the school. So, sure, from Gluckstadt Road, you can, I mean, the whole back of the building is exposed. You see the whole back of the building. A little bit of change in site design could have eliminated all of that with just some short knee walls that would come out from the building, would wrap around and hide that, and little landscaping in front. And again, maybe a fence or landscape of some sort that would just screen all that and could have had a completely different look.
And that would have had to have a parapet on the rear as well,
In fact,
according to.
That's.
And that is
So that
required
covered
in
in
the
the new one, in the new. Okay.
Yes, it is
anything that you
required.
see from the road.
Yeah.
That'll be incumbent on me and the art identifying that when they don't screen it, or have the parapet and that sort of thing, so. But it is in the writing.
And we're going to the detail of the screening material, and I'll give you a reference. Coming up, either north or south 55, right there in Ridgeland, they have the new building there that, which is built, what is it? UMMC. It's got the screen up there. So it looks like a galvanized, chain link fence, if you will, just a step up from chain. You can see right through. So we've even thought through all that to try to eliminate somebody from, even introducing that idea. But they made them, Ridgeland made them screen that, so that was probably the cheapest, easiest way to do it. And it looks better than exposed equipment up there, but it's not what we're looking for. So.
I think y'all done a great job.
All right, guys, thank y'all for all of that.
Thank y'all.
Let us know when you need us again, okay?
We'll do it.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have it back next week.
Anything else from anybody? I will need to adjourn if I take a motion. Ms. Campbell said adjourn. There a second?
Second.
Mr. Williams, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
So what, thank you. Yes, sir.